Rev up your engines!
Katana 92 says, thoughts on a Jeep Wrangler with a Hellcat engine? It would be an interesting experiment, you know? Those things are screaming monsters. You put that in a Jeep Wrangler, it's going to be a screaming monster, but realize it's going to be a death trap too, because that's high up in the air, the center of gravity's higher. You put that much horsepower in that little body, that high up in the air, it's a recipe for disaster, you know? So it would be an interesting thing to see, and if you had good brains where you could control yourself and not drive it too fast, it'd be kind of a cool thing to have, but you wouldn't want to be cornering full speed on that thing. It would tipple over. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Even those Range Rovers, and they weren't uber powerful, they set them up so that they had ram jacks, and if you cornered too fast, the computer would ram the ram jack, so when it started to tip that way, it would ram jack the other side, and if that didn't work, it would lower the power to the engine. So you put too much horsepower in one of those Jeeps, you could be asking for trouble. You know, that's a lot of power for a weird-shaped vehicle that's high up in the ground. Rich Boutine says, Scotty, I'm considering trading my 2015 Silverado on a new Tacoma. The Silverado is much nicer, but GM reliability concerns me. The radiator went out of 28,000 miles. How reliable are the new Tacomas? Well, probably 10 times more reliable than the GMs, you know? You're not going to have problems like that. That's a really smart move. Ages ago, you talk about 20, 30 years ago, the 1500 Chevy pickup trucks were really good trucks. I had customers get 200,000-300,000 miles out of them. Maybe they had to throw a transmission in or do a valve job or something on it, but they lasted a long time, but not any longer. The Toyotas still hold up. You know, the only problem that the Tacomas ever had was they had a problem with rusting frames on some of them, and Toyota replaced the frames free on them. The new ones have no frame problems whatsoever. Alec Thomas says, what's the first signs of struts or shocks going out? How long do they usually last? When they do go out, they do what they say. They absorb shock. When you corner, it'll wobble around more. But the easiest way to tell is go down a highway. And if you're going, say, 50, 60 miles an hour, if it's going pretty good, then you hit bumps and it starts shaking and bouncing and then it smooths out when you go to smooth, then they're definitely worn out. Now, you can go with a flashlight and you can look at them. And if you see where the shaft goes up and down, it's all covered in oils leaking out. That means the seal's gone and the oil's shot. How long they actually last depends on so many different variables. Let's take well-made ones. My wife's 2002 Lexus ES300. It's what? 17 years old, and the original struts are still on it, and it still rides like a dream. And we got a lot of potholes here in Houston. I even made a video about replacing with these strut assemblies, and I found out this cheap Chinese strut assembly actually worked worse than the 17-year-old one, so they can last a long time. But it's a combination of where you drive, if there's a lot of potholes and you bang it all the time, or if you just have a poorly made vehicle like Chryslers, they just wear out faster because they're cheaper. In my grandfather's day, we used to have customers come with Chryslers and the shocks were worn out at 15,000 miles because they just put cheap ones in. Depends on how it's made and where you drive. Alvarengo says, I have a 2010 Hyundai Sonata. When I hit the brakes, the front of the car squeaks like crazy. I think it's worse when it's raining. Brake pads, when I was a kid, were all made out of asbestos. Asbestos causes lung cancer. Everybody knows that today. You see those ads on TV. Oh, we'll sue your company for asbestos pollution and lung cancer. Years ago, they stopped making asbestos brake pads. So now they make them out of all kinds of material. You pull off your wheels and you see the brake pads are still thick, I'd say just live with it. It doesn't mean anything. But if it drives you nuts and you don't like it, you buy higher quality brake pads. Now, in the olden days, you had to buy new brake pads and new rotors to get rid of all the squealing. But there are companies that have excellent brake pads. I personally like Akebono. Akebono. It's a Japanese company. But they make brake pads for Fords, Mercedes, Toyotas, you name it. They cost a little bit more, yes, but they're the best pads. And I've had customers bring me ones that made horrible noises. Sometimes they even scraped the rotor. They got so thin. And they said, we don't want to spend much money. We don't want to replace the rotors. And the only thing I did was put Akebono brakes on. The noises all went away. You might want to check that if you don't like the noise. But if you pull off the wheels and there's plenty of pad left, live with it. It isn't going to hurt anything. Jose Ruiz says, Scotty, I have a 2002 Ford Explorer, which I fell in love with SUVs. I've been thinking of getting a GMC 2013 Terrain. What's your opinion? opinion. What SUV do you recommend? Don't get GMC. Their quality controls. You know, you want to get an SUV? Get a Toyota. You know, those things run forever. I got customers with Highlanders. They got 500,000 miles on them, and they've never touched the engines or transmissions. You're much better off. If you want to get a new one and you like the Ford, get another Ford. They're better made than the GMCs are by far, from my experience with the things. Man, I work on all kinds of cars. I don't discriminate against machines, other than I generally am not going to mess around with Ferraris and Lamborghinis. The parts cost so much money, and they're such a royal pain in the butt. And the people that own them are usually snobs, and I don't like dealing with snobs. I like dealing with the average American. You know, I'm an average American. I like dealing with average Americans. To me, let's face it, I like dealing with middle-class people that know I'm giving them a deal, giving them a fair price, doing quality work, and that's what I'm happy with.
So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.